Hey, welcome to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and spoilers are ahead for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this movie, and a little later I'm going to be joined by ScreenCrush's own Matt Singer and Greg Alba from The Real Rejects. But first, here's my take. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was a hard movie to watch. Now, I'm not saying that because it was bad. It wasn't perfect, but I'm going to get into that in a minute. For a movie about magic plants and people living underwater and mutants, it has a real emotional heart at its core, because everyone in the audience is mourning the loss of Chadwick Boseman, just like the characters on screen are mourning T'Challa. It's the kind of personal connection to a movie that you don't usually get apart from documentaries. Now, in a franchise that was not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they probably would have delayed this movie for a few years and then recast the character. But that's not really an option with Marvel, because this film exists in part to set up more movies and TV shows. That's actually this movie's biggest drawback that I'm going to talk about in just a second. Director Ryan Coogler stepped into this movie with a broken heart, mourning his friend, and I think that they found the perfect way to write T'Challa out of the franchise. For one, it was brilliant to give T'Challa a mysterious disease that he kept hidden from everyone, because this is a reflection of Chadwick Boseman's real life and makes the on-screen death even more tragic. I mean, think about it. There are hundreds of ways they could have handled this that would have just felt off. T'Challa could have been attacked and killed by Namor's people in the first scene, or he could have been assassinated by some splinter group loyal to Killmonger, or hell, could have even had the character go into space only to return as a different actor in a few years. Instead, they used T'Challa's death to motivate character and not plot. Shuri is the focus of this film. She begins the movie with a prayer, and she ends it by sparing Namor's life. She is angry at T'Challa's death, angry at Killmonger for destroying the herb, angry at herself for failing to save him, and probably angry at her brother for keeping his illness a secret. That rage drives Shuri's heart throughout this entire story, as she has to eventually answer the question, what kind of queen is she going to be?
Oh man, this is terrible.
What, Doug? The movie was okay. What's going on?
Or it wasn't the movie, I'm just having the worst day. Well, I tried to enter a dressage competition, but then mean judges told me no.
Dressage? Like, you know, where fancy people ride around on horses and they prance around and stuff?
Yeah, Doug wants to be fancy and ride a horse that prances around and stuff. But they said that I can't do dressage because I'm a dog. But I know it's actually because I am not fancy enough.
Well, if you want to be fancy, you could get a certificate from Established Titles. They're the sponsor of this video. Established Titles is a fun novelty gift that allows you to purchase 1 square foot of land in Scotland, which makes you a Scottish landowner. And according to Scottish custom, this would allow you to have the title of Lord or Lady. Now, my own land is on a private nature reserve in Edelston, and my purchase helps to preserve their woodlands. That's the really cool thing about this certification. It's not just a novelty gift, it helps protect the woodlands of Scotland. With every order, Established Titles plants trees all over the world. Through their charity partners, One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. Now, you'll get this certificate with an official crest and a unique plot number so you can see the exact location of your land. And then, Doug, you will be allowed to officially change your name to Lord or Lady.
And then I will ride the fancy horses.
Yes, you will. High five. It also makes for a terrific last-minute gift. I mean, just look at some of these reactions.
Lord Joe Green.
Yes! Lord Kenneth Delane Albright.
All right. Hey, look at that. You will be calling me Lord!
Established Titles is actually running a massive early Black Friday sale right now. Plus, if you use the code ScreenCrush, you get an additional 10% off. And the first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to my plot or within walking distance. Depending on how many people want to be a Lord or Lady, we can have our own little ScreenCrush kingdom. So, go to establishedtitles.com/ScreenCrush to get your gifts now and help support our channel. Now, back to Wakanda Forever. Ryan Coogler also, once again, gave us one of the best, if not the best, MCU villain in Namor. Now, Namor in the comics has never been a household name. Even though Aquaman debuted later, Namor does not have that same name recognition. Now, comic book readers know that Namor is always a badass. Sometimes he's a good guy, sometimes a bad guy, but he's always an a-hole who's trying to bone Mr. Fantastic's wife. Aquaman's comics even borrowed Namor's edginess in the 1990s, eventually evolving him into the king of the Broshan that Jason Momoa so perfectly embodies. So, Namor was ripe for reinvention on the big screen, and this reinvention was perfect. Killmonger was reimagined as a villain who carried the scars of slavery and poverty, a perfect counterpoint to Wakanda's isolated, prosperous civilization. But Namor and Talokan are another reflection of Wakanda. What if the heart-shaped herb was found by people who were already oppressed by colonizers, people who wanted nothing to do with the outside world for their own protection? In the comics, Namor is always mad about humanity spoiling the seas, but in this movie, the reaction is to something less ambiguous. He is protecting his people from genocide. He's a Moses figure, leading his people away from slavery and genocide, or imagine if Superman was able to lead the survivors of Krypton into a safe location.
Like Kandor.
Okay, yes, like the city in a bottle can door. So, Talokan and Wakanda are the flip side of one another. In the comics, Wakanda and Atlantis were always both secret societies, but this movie's brilliance is the reason those societies each stayed secret. Talokan also felt like a real place, filled with real people, a million times better realized than the Atlantis that we saw in Aquaman. But you can't deny that this movie is a victim of the first film's success. You just, for one thing, can't compare the two. Black Panther was such an unexpected financial success that I think Disney wanted this movie to be more of a linchpin to set up spin-offs and to be less self-contained. Now this is the big drawback of this film. The movie was 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and yet there were still characters that were rushed, underdeveloped, or even unnecessary.
Oh, like who?
Okay, so for example, there's Okoye storyline. Okoye is one of the best members of the supporting cast. Denai Guerrero was a key supporting player in Endgame and in Infinity War.
Why was she up there all this time?
And in this movie, she fails. She's disgraced. She loses everything. And everything that she was taught as a child about Bast and the heart-shaped herb was called into question. And we kind of barely see her on screen. Anika is another interesting member of the Dora Milaje, played by the great Michaela Cole. And her story also doesn't get any room to breathe. We know that she's untraditional, she's in a relationship with Io, and that she and Okoye wear the Midnight Angel armor from the comics.
Oh, all that stuff's in the comics?
Yes, and it's much better in the comics. In the comics, Anika kills a tribal chief for murdering women, so she is sentenced to death until her love, Io, rescues her. The two of them go through the country liberating women from villages and actually rebel against the throne. So Okoye is set up to have an arc like this, since she's now unemployed, so this is probably all set up for the Wakanda Disney Plus series. Plus, there's the storyline with Ross and Val, which could also have been completely cut out of the movie. But we know Val is going to be in the Thunderbolts, and that needs set up, so that has to be in the movie. And Riri Williams was great, and Dominique Thorne was hilarious.
Conscious or unconscious?
You need to be conscious of the way that you look.
Her appearance in the movie made me excited for the Ironheart TV show. But she also did not really need to be in the movie.
But she invented the vibranium detector.
Look, the Riri Williams plot has the same effect as going to South Korea to apprehend Claw in the first film. They both get the Wakandans out of their natural element and lead us on cool chase scenes. However, Claw was a crucial character in the first movie's story. Killmonger used him to gain the trust of W'Kabi and to enter Wakanda. Riri Williams was not crucial to this movie's story at all. I don't know, like if it was just one of these three elements in the movie, I wouldn't care. But when you add up all three of these storylines into a 2-hour, 40-minute runtime, it makes it feel like there's going to be a lot of deleted scenes. I mean, hell, we even see Riri building her armor in a series of Target ads. So the movie is at its strongest when it stays focused on the characters at its center, and that is where it excels. When me and the ScreenCrush team were talking about the video, our editor, Harriet Lengel-Enright, say hello, Harriet.
Hi.
She had a great point. The ending fight between Shuri and Namor was unlike anything else we've seen. Rather than two people slugging it out with ray beams shooting out of their hands, these are two nuanced characters who have incredibly relatable intentions. Instead of rooting for Shuri to win and kill the bad guy, we're rooting for her to show the bad guy mercy. And in the moments after she wins, she hears the voice of Killmonger reminding her of what her rage can turn her into. And then she hears her mom from the ancestral plane encouraging her to show him who she is. And then there's all these incredible flashbacks between the Talokanians and the Wakandans as Shuri puts together that they're all the same people. And after she offers Namor peace, he looks at her and sees flashes of his mother, which goes back to his mother's bracelet, which he gave to Shuri and allowed her to synthesize the heart-shaped herb. This is a movie fight that ends with two fully realized characters finally understanding one another and agreeing to work together to build a better future. And that is truly rare in any movie. But that's just what I think. I'm lucky to be joined here by two of the best. We have the ScreenCrush editor-in-chief, Matt Singer, and from the Real Rejects YouTube channel, Greg Alba. So, Greg, I watched your review that you posted on YouTube right after seeing the movie, your reaction, if you will, and you loved this movie. It seemed like pretty unconditionally, unlike myself. So I just want to get your take real quick on what you thought of the film and what really spoke to you about it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was just an absolutely beautiful experience. There's something about I think when it comes to the, I've been hearing different opinions about the film, and I was wondering why this one hit me so personally. And I think it has something to do with the fact that I've dealt with so much real life tragedies myself, and grief has been such a, I feel, even when I started with YouTube channel, it's been such a dominant theme my entire life. And I think that's why it just hit me. I connected with it so much that every little bit of nuance and every tone, I think, just really registered with me throughout.
Yeah, well, one thing that, really is extraordinary about this movie is how we can all personally feel the grief of the characters because as a, collective humanity, we mourn Chadwick Boseman. Like, it was a horrible tragedy that we lost him. But apart from like your personal feelings of grief and how it spoke to you personally, like, what about the film? Like, do you think set it above, some of the MCU canon, like you were saying in your review?
What I think set it above the MCU canon for me was the fact of how I felt that they decided to tell something that felt remarkably personal, and I think that it did a great job, this exceptional job at world building in a way that felt like it was building actually within the world itself and not building just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was just building within the world, exploring more cultures and whatnot. But beyond that, I think it's one of the main reasons I love Avengers Endgame so much too. Even though that's more doing the thing that I said that this film is not really doing. Like, this one, to me, what it did was it told a story beyond just like connecting to the theme of grief. It told a story that I thought was just that much more personal and intimate. And with a franchise this massive and vast and that is so gung-ho in action, like what I really loved about even the action scenes, I thought the action scenes were driven so much by the narrative that it imbued a sense of like it was suspenseful due to that. It was emotional due to that. Like I'm assuming we're talking spoilers in this discussion, right? Yeah, it is all spoilers. Yeah. Like when Namor did attack Wakanda, I remember just really being on the edge of my seat and having my heart pounding. And I've gotten so used to action within the Marvel Cinematic Universe that more often than not, it's just exciting to me or cool to look at. This one, I was feeling the harrowing nature of it all. And I love like the bleakness of it and watching characters really have to transform, like what Shuri was having to deal with, of having to combat a darkness within her. So much of, I think, there's always that debate between like DC and Marvel, and DC tends to, the live action can go pretty dark. And I think what they did here, especially with Shuri, was she is combating a true darkness within them. And I love the themes of people banding together in the darkest emotional turmoil times that they're having to like pretty much suffer through. And it's through the gathering together of the bonding of them having to just survive together. Because more than just like surviving on a physical stakes, it's like surviving through a time of harshness of something that's truly gut-wrenching to them. And it's that hope of them banding together. And also with Shuri especially, I love the portrayal of where she had to really combat something truly dark within her, and that the movie leaned into that. I know the characters usually have something to deal with that's dark within them. A lot of them, even if you look back at Iron Man, there was a darkness he had to overcome. This one really let you simmer in that emotion. And it just felt the most mature to me, I think, out of a lot of the other Marvel movies. Okay, well, that's awesome that Shuri's arc especially spoke to you, because that's what every movie maker wants, is for the characters to speak to the audience on a personal level. Matt, I read your review. It's up over on ScreenCrush.com if you guys want to check it out. It's a great read. And you didn't quite feel as favorably as Greg did. In fact, I think in your MCU rankings out of 30 films, I think you placed Wakanda Forever like dead in the middle of the pack. So what are your thoughts on the movie, and where did it hit and where did it miss?
Well, I think all the things that work in it is the stuff that Greg really liked, is, the where they take the real world tragedy that occurred and find a way to sort of make that the subtext, or sometimes the straight up text of the movie. I mean, the opening scenes, they come pretty close to making it Chadwick Boseman's story in a sense, and the reaction to his death from these real world people. And I thought those sequences were pretty fantastic. And I thought that at the end of the movie, when they sort of bring the themes back around to that, I thought was very emotionally effective as well. And I agree. All of that stuff I think is really well done, very moving. Must have been incredibly difficult to do. And I think in general, just the fact that they pulled any movie off at all, given the circumstances, is impressive, because they were, from what I understand, I mean, they had a script for a movie with T'Challa in it, and he suddenly passes away, and they have to figure out something to do. I guess for me, the problem was, it's not like this is a movie, at least from my perspective, that's just about grief and loss and dealing with, the death of T'Challa / Chadwick Boseman. There's a lot of this movie that just kind of, like the plot, that sort of pushes and elbows that out of the center of the frame, and those were the parts of the movie that I sort of found to be less effective. I think you can see at times the movie, and I certainly don't know this for a fact, but I felt like at times you could see the movie that they wanted to make, which would have, I assume, been sort of paralleling T'Challa and Namor and Wakanda and Talokan. And I feel like that movie thematically would have been a lot more cohesive than the movie that we did get, where instead it's mostly Namor and Shuri. And I don't know that combination of characters works quite as well. And, on top of that, we have a lot of sort of extra stuff, Marvel Cinematic Universe-itis, where there's things that are setting up things down the road that really don't need to be here. I thought the Ironheart character was actually very charming, and it did make me look forward to her show. I didn't really feel like putting her in here added that much to the movie, and in fact, I thought it kind of distracted from the things that really worked. The same with, and this is another spoiler, but all the stuff with Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra Fontaine, whatever her name is.
I know it's hard, but I don't like to repeat myself, so you can just call me Val.
It's kind of clever to see her show up, and I guess, it makes sense within the overall arc of the MCU and everything. But what does she really add to this movie? Not that much. And again, just sort of adding on scenes that kind of distract from the main focal point and make the movie just kind of needlessly long and a little more diffuse. And so I'm sort of left with a movie that I found to be generally effective and had some really wonderful scenes and moments and characters, but maybe had too many characters, maybe too many scenes, and just, compared to the original Black Panther, I think it's a sort of a noble effort and a noble tribute, but it's just, to me, it's just not on the same level as the original movie and some of the other best MCU movies.
Yeah, and I talked earlier about how I thought the same thing, that Riri was great, but a distraction. Valentina Allegra de Fontaine was great, but a distraction. It's a cool setup for the Thunderbolts or Black Panther 3. And I also thought those two storylines really took away from Okoye's storyline. And she's a character who we've been with through a few movies now. She's obviously got a really strong arc in this, but we don't really get to see the result of it, probably because she's going to, like I said earlier, going to spin off in a Disney Plus series. Like you said, in your review, it's really hard to watch the first Black Panther and then go into this, because that first movie is so good and it leaves you so upbeat. And this movie, is about grief. It's a bummer. And it's a bummer because in real life, it's horrible what happened to Chadwick Boseman. And I think real life is a bummer, and you don't usually go to Marvel movies to see that happen. So it really struck me as a conflicting thing. I was having trouble processing, the emotions of real life, inflicting on this. For Greg, that was a huge plus. And it might be for me on a second viewing as well. It does, bring me back around to T'Challa and make me wonder, obviously when he passed away, because he passed away so young, they weren't going to recast him like they did Thunderbolt Ross, who's going to be, William Hurt's going to be replaced by Harrison Ford. But, with a little bit of time and distance, you look at it and go, well, this character is immortal. T'Challa will be around there will be Black Panther comic books as long as there are people making comic books and comic book stories. So should they have recast him, or should they recast him in the future? Are there more stories to tell with him? Or did they kind of cheeky recast him with that post-credit scene? Greg, what do you think? What are your feelings on T'Challa's future in the MCU, and if he should have one?
When it comes to T'Challa, I don't think they should have recast him, because it's a different associate. I actually understand some of the argument for the movement, but I think when you're talking about comic book medium versus live action medium, it's a completely different emotional association with knowing that with being aware of an actor being aware of a real life passing. So I don't think they should have recast T'Challa. I just think the association is very different. And then if they just did recast him, it would be nothing but a comparison. And then you just get the other camp of, people being like, you shouldn't have recast T'Challa, this is disrespectful. So it would just be the complete other pendulum swing. So it's like, I personally respect the choice that they decided to do here. I've been just hearing theories about what they might do with like Prince T'Challa in the future. The best one I heard was from our buddy Coy Jandro, that he believes that he will be a young Avenger versus just immediately hopping to it. Because in that post-credit scene, one thing that I really love that they talk about was how, Nakia and T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, they agreed that, Prince T'Challa, he shouldn't be exposed to any of this just yet. And I want to see that journey of Prince T'Challa going back, maybe when he's just like in his teen years, going to Wakanda and kind of having a different type of mirroring situation with what Killmonger went through with going to Wakanda in the first Black Panther, where that was like an aggression and wanting like a power takeover. This would be a very different kind of journey on a personal level of going to Wakanda and then having to deal with being the rightful heir to the throne. I think that would be a more interesting journey. But yeah, I like the idea of him being a young Avenger first. That kind of makes more sense to me. And I do respect what you guys.
Sounds like Harry Potter.
A little bit, yeah. I do, and I will say, like, out of everything you guys are talking about, especially with Valentina, and like Martin Freeman, that's actually the one storyline that, while I enjoyed watching it, just because I like watching them, it is the one part of the story that I was like, yeah, that wasn't really the most necessary, though. I was really affected, though, by Okoye's arc in there, because I think everything was thematically tied in with her. And maybe it was the desire to see more screen time with more fleshing it out that you were talking about, Ryan. Because I like the portrayal of grief when someone goes into, because a lot of times it's like, when you're in that stage of grief, you can't feel, you feel this need to try to control something. So you usually try to control something within. So when you're seeing something like Shuri mirroring with Okoye, who has this like sort of arrogance and control and sense of pride, and you're watching that get like shattered and ripped apart to sort of be born anew with a different direction. And I feel like that's what the association with getting the new suit had to deal with. And I also think that with Riri Williams, I loved I didn't find her a distraction. And I've heard that several times. I personally thought that what she served in terms of the friendship with Shuri was one of the few rays of light, because I know that it created like sort of a plot device, kind of like an America Chavez situation. But whenever there was like that ray of light that shined through in her friendship that she was developing with Shuri, sort of reinstilling the hope again, because, Riri's not personally super affected by the death of T'Challa, and she kind of reminds Shuri of who she was before the death of T'Challa. So I think that friendship really served a true emotional core, at least in the way I was reading it throughout the movie.
Matt, what do you think? Like, as far as the recast T'Challa, we've seen other characters recast in the MCU. Never, a young person recast because of their death like this. But do you think this is something that they will do or should do, or do you just think they'll like age up Prince T'Challa into that role at some point?
Well, I definitely don't think they will do it anymore. I think that ship has sailed after this movie. Should they have done it? I mean, I was thinking about this earlier, and, I see your point, Ryan, about, that they have, or they are going to recast other roles, and, comic book characters just go on forever. So, there is that. But on the other hand, I think I sort of agree with Greg that I think people, they want, it's an unfortunate and impossible situation. They would love more T'Challa stories because he is a great character, and there's so many more things they could have done with him. But no matter who they cast, it's just an impossible comparison, and whoever it was would have been forced to live up to Chadwick Boseman, which would have been impossible, and it would have been distracting. And it's like every time you looked at whatever actor they would have chose, it would have taken you out of the movie. And so I feel like as much as they maybe could have, if they had waited, if they had said, you know what, we're not going to make Wakanda Forever, we're going to wait 5 years and we're going to do other things and then we'll revisit it. They could have done it, and maybe by then people might have accepted it. But I do think they were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place there. As for his son, I don't know. I didn't particularly love that reveal. And I would be perfectly happy if we never saw that character again, if that was just sort of a way to kind of pay tribute and to say, you know, this is our way of paying homage to this great actor that we all loved. And that character, they even say we don't want him to be a part of this world right away. I would be fine if he just kind of lived in Haiti forever. That idea,
kind of like Brian, kind of like Paul Walker's character in The Fast and the Furious. It's like he's living a good life. He's over there. Don't worry about him.
I don't know. I mean, maybe in a few years, if, like you said, they made him a teen superhero of some kind, I guess that could work. And maybe, and what you're describing about, someday he could go to Wakanda and you could follow him there. I guess that could be kind of interesting. I just felt like, there is that fine line between where this movie is walking about the sort of, it's a fictional movie about fictional people, but they're putting a lot of, real world meta elements on top of that. And that was one where, I don't know, I felt like they may have kind of stepped over the line a little bit. Not in like a way that made me angry or anything, but it just seemed a little excessive. And it made me think about timelines of like, well, wait, how long? And I've been like messaging Ryan with this, like, wait, what year is this movie taking place? And how could this child be born? And how old is he? And when was the blip? And this and that. It just kind of like took me out of, I felt like the final scene before the credits was very emotional and moving and well made. And then there's these credits, which are very, the typical Marvel end credit thing is like the fancy kind of computer animated graphics and stuff that are very cool. And they went with something very different and muted and emotional with these robes and the fire. And I was like, oh, this is really, this is a classy, nice decision. I really like this. And then that ends and they go into the scene, which felt, I don't know, it was more, it kind of took me out of that mood and put me into a different place. So that was a long-winded way of saying, yeah, I would be fine, if T'Challa, Prince T'Challa just kind of didn't necessarily return anytime soon. That would be fine with me.
Well, you talked about the post-credits scene, and that's one thing that, whether you like the Marvel movie or not, everybody's always waiting to see the post-credits scene because we want to see the tease for Kang or the Dora Milaje spin-off series or whatever's going to come next. We didn't get that in these post-credits, but the movie does, like we talked about earlier, does tease some things that don't really belong in this movie, but are going to be a lot of fun in the future. So what exactly, are you most excited for, Matt, coming into the next Marvel thing that this movie set up? I know it's not T'Challa Jr., but what else are you looking forward to?
I mean, the thing that I'm most excited about based on this movie would have to be the Ironheart show, because I thought that character, while she really, wasn't necessary, she certainly wasn't necessary. I understand what Greg's saying about, her relationship with Shuri. It lightened up the movie, and that's fair. I mean, Shuri was sort of that character in the first movie, and here she's sort of called upon to be a much more serious and dark and emotional figure, and so you sort of, I guess, do need somebody to provide that kind of comic relief or lightness, and that's what she does. I just thought, the casting was great. The character was great. Like, you just felt like, oh, this is like a fully realized, fleshed out person that has existed before this movie found her and is going to exist after this movie leaves her, which is, sort of the great thing about Marvel is that the characters, they kind of interweave with one another, and they kind of pop up here, they pop up there, and they feel so much bigger than any one thing. And that's how the Ironheart character felt to me here. Is like, she didn't really fit too well here, but I look forward to seeing her show. I think that I'm very curious to see what they do with her next. So that would be my choice of the things that this movie sets up down the line that I'm most excited for.
Yeah, I agree. And Ironheart's not a character who in the comics I particularly like. In the comics, I don't think she got as much definition as she did in the movie. And I haven't read every Ironheart comic. I'm just talking about her origin run in Invincible Iron Man. Greg, what about you? What about this movie has really got you excited for what's coming next for Marvel?
I mean, yeah, I have to agree with Matt that in the context of I'm really excited for Ironheart. Like that's the part I'm most excited for, is to see her show, because I wasn't excited for Ironheart. I didn't really care, to be perfectly frank, about there being an Ironheart series, no matter what information's coming out about it. But I really loved her performance, and I thought that she just felt like a human being to me. And so I want to see more. I didn't really have that feeling with like America Chavez in Doctor Strange, even though I think she did a good job. But I think with Riri Williams, I really want to see her character. And with the Dora Milaje show, Okoye is supposed to be in there, right? Is that the rumor? Maybe. I would like to see more.
I'm guessing.
I feel like what this movie, especially with Denai Guerrero, what they really like, she had that one really powerful scene when she's stripped of being general, and that scene was kind of shattering to me, and I was like, wow, so I understand. I that's why I'm actually okay with hearing when people are like, yeah, I wanted more of Okoye. I felt like they kind of missed the mark a little bit on some of her story. I'm okay with some people saying that, because to me, I just register that as people just wanted more of her because she's actually great. She's actually awesome. So I would love that, if there is the Dora Milaje show, to see Denai Guerrero continue on and get a chance to really lead, because she's usually a supporting player. She's shown on Walking Dead, Okoye here, and I would love to see her get a chance to really lead, because I think she has the capabilities of it, and I feel like with some of the Disney Plus shows, some of them are, a lot better than others. I feel like that would be one of the cases where you do give a supporting character a chance to be a lead, and I feel like she could really knock it out of the park. And so I would like to see that. So other than, Riri Williams, I would love to see Denai Guerrero lead a Disney Plus show, because I feel like she's more than capable of doing it.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say that you'll see her and Michaela Cole's character be the Midnight Angels in a show, just because Michaela Cole's another one who's a great actor. And she doesn't have a lot to do in this movie. So that's why when I talked about like kind of an imbalance in what was there, it was like too much of a good thing. All right, well, thank both of you very much for joining me. Matt Singer, where can the people find you?
ScreenCrush, ScreenCrush.com. We're there every day. There's lots of Black Panther stuff up there right now. If you want to read some more, you can find it there.
And lots coming on our YouTube channel as well. And Greg Alba, you have what is it, a YouTube channel or a MySpace page? What is it you do?
Heavy spoilers. Go follow me over there. Crushing it these days. Yeah, youtube.com/TheRealRejects. Normally not this serious in conversation, so it's kind of fun to just hop on here and be like, I don't know what I'm really walking into today. And it's kind of nice to have, like, we're having a serious conversation right now about Black Panther. All right, this is cool.
Well, it's a serious movie. And yeah, like I said before, if you guys haven't seen Greg's channel, it's great. They up to the minute reactions to the newest things, and he also goes back and does reactions to older movies like The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, things like that. So we want to hear from you guys down in the comments below, or you can add any of us on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.